Good afternoon. Jason, hello.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
Hello, Abby Stafford. Thank you both for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, great. This is the second of three Lighthouse Point interviews we're doing. Thank you for the questionnaires. Dan and I will definitely have some questions that relate to the questionnaires that you have filled out, and some questions on other topics as well. But let's do this just to get the ball rolling. I want to let each of you, make sort of a general opening statement like you would if you were addressing a civic group or something. Maybe keep it to 60 or 90 seconds, but tell us, why you're the best candidate in this race, and what distinguishes you from your opponent. And let's start with we'll go alphabetically the first time. Let's start with you, Jason Joffe.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Jason Joffe. I am current Lighthouse Point City Commissioner for Seat 3, and I'm running for re-election because I'd like to finish what I started when I ran back in 2015. I believe there's a lot of other things that I would like to do as a commissioner here in Lighthouse Point, and I believe that I have a proven track record of delivering on promises. By no means am I perfect. It takes a lot of time and effort, sometimes too long and too much effort to get things done in local government, which is something I would like to change. But when I went through this process for the first time in 2015, I made a lot of promises, and I do believe that I delivered, and they were pretty big promises. When I first ran in 2015, never having any political experience before, I told the residents that I wanted to pass term limits in Lighthouse Point. I believe very strongly in term limits for elected officials. That was quite a controversial topic in Lighthouse Point. And the first time I pushed for it on the commission, I was not successful, but I tend to be persistent. And the second time around, I convinced enough of my fellow commissioners up there to at least put it on a ballot. And over 60% of the residents agreed with me. So that was something I'm very proud of. I also believe very strongly in transparency in government. When I was elected back in 2015, I wouldn't say it was difficult to participate in Lighthouse Point. It's not that big a city, but you had to come to a meeting at 7:30 at night on a Tuesday and physically drive down to City Hall. I believe the transparency in government is key, so I fought very hard for live video streaming and recording of commission meetings so we could get more resident input. That was, again, not very well received when I first brought it up, but I fought hard for it, and now it's a reality. And not that anybody could predict the pandemic. It came in pretty damn handy when the pandemic happened as well, to have that infrastructure in place. Okay. That's it. So I probably went too long. Cut me off. Feel free to cut me off.
Okay,
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But and before I turn it over to Abby, remind us, what is the term limits? What are the term limits in Lighthouse Point?
Yeah, so actually, the current term limits, we moved the terms, or the residents, I should say. The terms used to be 3 years long. What we did, or what the residents voted on, was moving the terms for commissioners to 4 years, and a commissioner or a mayor can serve 3 consecutive 4-year terms, which is 12 years, which is more than I wanted. I wanted 2 4-year terms, but sometimes politics is about compromise. So to get it on a ballot, I compromised with my fellow commissioners, and we made 3 4-year terms. And then since the seats are staggered, you would have to take a cycle off, which would create an open seat. And then if you wanted to run again after taking some time off, and you were such a great commissioner that the residents wanted to vote you back in, you could. So that's the current state of affairs.
And to clarify, of course, based on what you just described, this would be your last term, correct?
No, that was the other that was the other compromise I had to make. There is no credit. It starts this cycle.
I see. Okay.
So I could have another, just to be candid, I could have another 4 years. We have another commissioner up there that's been up there a very long time. But I'm just saying you don't get credit for time served under the current system. Everybody started fresh.
I got it. Understand. Okay. Yep. Abby Stafford, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to this interview. I have been a resident of Lighthouse Point it'll be 10 years in September since I bought my house. I love the city. I think that it's a great city, one of the best in Broward County. I think the current commissioners have done a great job, but I think there is room for improvement. I think there's always room for improvement in local government. And so I bring a strong small business background. I'm a CPA by trade. I worked for Deloitte Tax for almost 6 years before leaving that position as a tax manager to join my family business. I've been the CFO at Tire Souls of Broward for almost, 11 and a half years at this point. I'm also a financial coach, so I help individuals and small business owners develop plans, financial plans to pay off debt, build savings, get on a budget. I'm very familiar with budgets. I believe that I can bring my skill set of, personal and business budgets to the city commission and help Lighthouse Point with the budgeting process. If you think of a city like a business, the residents are the customers, and the customer's always right. So I personally, through other civic organizations, I have knocked on probably close to 300 to 400 doors between that organization and my current campaign, just listening to what my neighbors have to say. And there's some issues that, they feel like there's room for improvement on. And these are the issues that I want to bring to the city commission.
Okay, thank you. Abby, tell me what kind of a business is Tire Souls? What is that?
We are a commercial, mainly Goodyear tire dealer. So we actually supply, we do a lot of business with the local municipalities in the county and in the Tri-County area, really. We've been around for 50 plus years. So we, like I said, we're mainly a Goodyear dealer, but we're independent. My father owns the business. I'm third generation in the business. And actually, my grandfather's first store location was in Lighthouse Point, around 34th Court back in the 60s. So I have long-standing ties to the area. Born and raised in Broward County.
Okay, great. And in your 10 years as a resident, have you had the opportunity? Have you served on any municipal boards, planning and zoning, parks and rec?
At this point, I have not. To be honest with you, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, if this was a direction that I would have seen myself taking, I would have said no, absolutely not. But the pandemic kind of changed everything. It caused everybody to pay attention in different ways, and in my mind, it showed me how important local government is to your day-to-day lives. And so it was kind of the impetus that caused me to want to get more involved, to serve on civic organizations, and to get involved in my local government. Okay.
Dan, I'm going to let you jump in and ask questions if you like anytime, sir. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sure. Abby, couple of questions for you. You mentioned in your opener that there's always room for improvement, in this city commission or in any city commission, but what particularly about the Lighthouse Point Town Commission do you see as there being room for improvement?
I think the first thing in like I said, talking to my neighbors and talking to the way that the city operates and the way the residents interact with the city, I think one of the biggest issues that my neighbors and my friends came back to me and told me about was just the permitting process, dealing with the building department, getting permits passed. And obviously, it's a good problem to have. A lot of people want to do renovations to their home. Obviously, when people were stuck at home at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was doing home renovation projects. And so, they're going to the building department and asking, like applying for permits and all of that. And it just seems like there's a lot of frustration. There wasn't a lot of information online. It's not a very electronic or efficient system for the residents. And I think that there's a lot of room for improvement in that department. And it's not on the employees. It's on the city commission to give them the tools that they need to make the process easier, both for them and for the residents. And so that's one of the biggest issues I've heard.
Okay, and it's funny you say that because the horror stories about the permitting process also came up multiple times in yesterday's interview for District 1. So you are not alone in that. I also wanted to ask you. You mentioned that the pandemic made you want to run for office because it showed how important local government is. Can you tell me, kind of dig into that a little more? In what ways did the pandemic made you realize that the effect local government can have on your life?
Sure. So, I mean, as a small business, we were at the mercy of, the county and the city governments as to whether we could stay open or we needed to shut down and not allow customers into our premises. Fortunately for my business, we were considered essential. We're a tire dealer. Literally, one of the county governments said, "You are essential. You cannot close." So we stayed open. I came to my office every single day during 2020, 2021. I've never worked from home. And to be honest with you, I'm grateful for that, because I think I would have gone insane working from home for 2 years. But, other businesses, restaurants, hair salons, nail salons, and the like, they weren't so fortunate, and they were ordered shut down. I had coaching clients that were those types of businesses, and they could not work for 2 months. And it's a lot of responsibility on the local governments and the county governments. And I just think that, at the beginning, we didn't know what we didn't know, and decisions were made. But as information came in, you have to reassess. And so that's kind of where I come from, as far as the local government being so important.
So you don't feel that county and town government moved quickly enough, given the developing situation and what we came to know?
I believe they moved quickly on the front end. I definitely believe they moved quickly on the front end, because but the back end, reassessing. I'm a strong believer in individual liberty and freedom. Obviously, you have to think of the greater good at the same time. But when you're talking about the life of a business, a business that is in your community and impacts the community, if it's forced to shutter for good, that's a big responsibility. I feel like the business owner should have some authority in that decision, and they should not have it taken away from them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Let me ask Jason Joffe. Jason, is the criticism of the permitting process at City Hall, is that criticism justified in your opinion?
I think it is. I do. And I think I literally just got done myself with a renovation at my house, a fairly substantial one. So I experienced firsthand, like after investigating and talking about permitting and hearing from the residents for their horror stories. So I was very, very involved in it. I actually talked to every inspector that came to my house and asked them and I was very candid with them. I really was. And Abby, this is not a secret that people in the city are upset, but I said, listen, permitting guy, inspector, people are upset and don't like the permitting process in Lighthouse Point. Talk to me about that. What are the issues, and what do you need? What support can I give you as a commissioner? I said, is it manpower? Is it additional support? And every one of them said technology, which is something Abby did allude to. But in fairness to what we have done over the past several years, when I first got elected, there was no technology in the building department, zero. Now, at least there is tracking of your permit. There is now some technology associated. You can see where your permit is in the process. One of the big things and one of the chief complaints I've heard of is that Lighthouse Point does not have e-permitting, where that the builder cannot or the resident cannot submit the permit electronically. And I totally agree. If I had a magic wand and unlimited funds, which we don't, candidly, let's all be honest with each other, I would have e-permitting done tomorrow. But if you look at all the materials, that is one thing I'm very focused on, is getting e-permitting in the city, because it just adds insult to injury when somebody has a bad experience at the building department and they have to physically go down to the building department to submit. Sometimes contractors have to come from other parts of the county to do it. And if you could do it online, I think that would help foster a bit more peace in the building department.
Yeah, we heard from one of your fellow candidates. We heard that the building department in Lighthouse Point still uses a fax machine to communicate with the outside world. I mean, that's something out of the 1990s. Okay?
Yes, right? They do have email though too. I mean, okay. you can email as well, but it's for some things they prefer it via fax.
Okay, Jason, what is your position on the proposal by the D'Souza family to build a 3- or 4-story hotel on Federal Highway?
Yeah, that popped up as an important issue. My position is I don't know enough to have a position other than it's zoned for a hotel, candidly, right now. And again, I will be the first to admit that we need to look at the federal highway corridor and update the zoning. But right now you can't do it, after somebody submitted an application. There's property rights implicated, personal liberties, as Abby has alluded to. And actually, when I first learned about this hotel, that they had originally submitted a much more grandiose project with a parking garage and all kinds of stuff. And it went through the DRC process, the design review committee, which I cannot be a part of and am not a part of. And that family was told that this was probably a bit too much for that property. And then they came back with a much more scaled down project. So I think respectfully to that family, we can help be partners with them and get the best damn hotel, if that's what they choose to do, the best damn hotel possible, because it's zoned for a hotel, and I don't want to get sued over it. It's not worth, I don't know if it's worth litigation to prevent a property that, if done right, hopefully can be beneficial to the city.
Okay. Abby, what are your thoughts briefly on this hotel? If you were on the city commission, what questions you'd be asking and whether or not it's is this good? I'm interested in whether it's, in your opinion, is it within everybody knows the unique character of the community you guys live in. It's great. It's a great place. Is this hotel suitable for the character of Lighthouse Point?
Full disclosure, I don't know a ton about the project. I've read several news articles about it, and I've heard rumblings about it in the city. My first question is the property going to be a hotel, or is it going to be a motel? Because I've heard, like per the article that I read, it seems like it may be more on the side of motel, extended stay, like longer term, not nightly. And to me, city commission needs to look at this with a fine-tooth comb, and the residents need to be informed as to the project, because if it's something that does not lend itself to the feel and the look of Lighthouse Point, then it's not a good, I agree with Jason about, not wanting to open up to a lawsuit, but at the same time, like, our city is great and we need to protect the look of our city. And from what I've heard so far, it just does not seem like it matches well with Lighthouse Point.
Okay. I want to stay with you for a second, Abby. Dan, did you have a related question? Sorry.
No, I had something I wanted to get back to Jason on, but if you want to follow up with Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, Abby, I'm going to switch and ask a question that's a little bit more political in nature, but it's, we realize these are nonpartisan city elections. Has the Broward County Republican Party taken a position in your race? Have they endorsed a candidate in this race?
I do not believe that they have endorsed any candidates in the race. I believe that decision was made at the monthly meeting last month to give an official endorsement. Okay.
And what in your are you a member of the Broward County Republican Party?
I am.
What's the appropriate role for the county Republican Party in a municipal race like this?
The Broward Republican Executive Committee exists to get more Republicans elected to different offices from top to bottom. I don't think they're taking a huge role in this nonpartisan election, but they are supporting members within their ranks that are choosing to run, and keeping a I know, I'm sure that if the interview yesterday spoke to the meeting, there was probably information given about it, but I don't think their intent was ever to have a high profile on this election. That was not their intent. They just are, their business is to get more Republicans elected.
Okay. And Jason, do you have any thoughts, pro or con, about the appropriate role of the Republican Party in a race like this?
I'll say it's a nonpartisan election, and I think that injecting partisanship in a nonpartisan election could change the character of the city, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Abby, I want to ask this question respectfully because in the course of a campaign, you hear lots of different things. But are you running in any way as a challenger? Are you running in tandem with Brian Costigan? Are you running as a slate with him in any way?
We're not running as a slate, but our issues and priorities are very similar. So I can understand why that question would come up. But again, we are both precinct committee people, and we talk to our neighbors. Part of our responsibilities are to talk to our neighbors about upcoming elections and different issues that impact their lives. And so as a result of that, we were hearing the same things since we took those positions. And so it makes sense why our priorities would be very similar based on what our neighbors have to say.
Okay. Let me ask you another question, Abby, if I can. And
Sure.
And I'm going to frame it this way as somebody who's covered many local and county elections in Broward through the years. The challenger running against an incumbent, the challenger has the burden of convincing voters to, in effect, turn out of office the person who's there. Mm-hmm. The person who's there is an incumbent, is known in the community. And so I would ask you here and now to crystallize as best you can, why you'd be a preferred alternative to 4 more years of Jason Joffe.
I believe that I bring a unique perspective to the city commission. I'm in small business. I'm a CPA. I bring a strong financial background to the position. I think that experience is very unique compared to a lot of the current commissioners. And I think that, with my experience of, talking to my neighbors and listening to their concerns and just wanting to, serve them better and, push on some of these issues, Mr. Joffe said, at the beginning that, he hasn't gotten everything accomplished that he wanted to get accomplished. Another issue that has definitely been raised time and time again, as I've talked to, hundreds of my neighbors, is the concern over transient rentals, better known as Airbnbs in the neighborhood. And I know that in his first year in office on the commission, he pushed for ordinances for the transient rentals. But here we are, six plus years later, and they're a real problem. And I say that with a little bit of a conflict because obviously I'm an entrepreneur. I think that small business and what these people are trying to do with these rentals, it's like on the one hand, I can understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, it's ruining the feel of our neighborhoods. And so I guess my challenge to the incumbent is like some of these issues have been around a long time and nothing's getting done about them. And there's ordinances on the books and they're not helping. And so I guess my response is that I want to be on the commission to make changes in these areas because these are the pain points. This is the heartburn for the residents. Okay, I'm going to get to Jason in just a second, but I want to ask you one more quick question. Tell us the issue of vacation rentals and transient rentals is a major problem in lots and lots of places. Yeah. And so tell us specifically, if you can, something you would have done that the city hasn't done to control this problem. I don't feel that Lighthouse Point is really like a resort. When I think of Airbnbs, I think of them, or vacation rentals, whatever you want to say, the shorter term rentals, weekends, whatever. It just doesn't seem like Lighthouse Point is the type of city to have these types of homes. I think longer term, ordinances where you can only rent out your house for longer term contracts, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year. I think that's the way to go because otherwise you've got different people. I mean, I have one directly like catty cornered behind my house, and I hear people out there all hours of the night in the pool during the week. And I know that the people living on either side of that house have it even worse because they're right next to the house. And I just feel like it's ruining the feel of our neighborhoods. And when there's an oversaturation, that's even worse. And I was literally walking the block behind my house this past weekend, and there's four. There's four on that one block.
Okay. Jason, there's a lot there that we covered with Abby in the last few minutes, and I want to turn the floor over to you and let you respond first of all, but I'll ask a question or two. But if
Sure.
Anything you want to say in response to what you just said, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll start with the transient rentals because that's an issue that I hold near and dear to my heart as well. If I had a magic wand, which I don't, I would get rid of short-term rentals in Lighthouse Point. That wand is actually held by Tallahassee right now. And we cannot, through preemption, do more than what we're doing in Lighthouse Point. And I am a big believer in home rule. I believe that Tallahassee is taking too much authority. And this goes long before the current administration. I don't want to make it about the current administration at all. I really don't. This has gone prior administrations. Tallahassee is eating away at the power of local government, and it drives me crazy. Because what's the point of having a local government at some point? So candidly, I'm a big proponent of home rule. I wish we had more home rule. I wish we did a better job of lobbying as cities to get more home rule back. So I believe, and I worked very hard on that ordinance, and I wish we could do more. And Ms. Stafford's criticism of we still have them is because we can't ban them. And candidly, my job as a city commissioner is to legislate, to pass ordinances. I do not, it's for the city administration and the mayor to enforce. And we have done a lot or tried as much as we can to enforce logically the ordinance we have. We get a report every meeting, once a month on the number of rentals we have, where they are in the process. So and I don't think Ms. Stafford was trying to imply that we've done nothing, but I believe we've done as much as we can, and I wish we could do more. So that's the transient rentals.
Okay.
Good. If you want to ask a question or circle back to the other
Yeah,
stuff.
I want to come back to you very briefly, but I do want to explore this.
Sure.
Abby, I want you to tell me, Abby Stafford, if you agree or disagree with Jason that Tallahassee, the legislature, is the major problem here with why cities can't regulate vacation rentals.
I would have to look into it a little further. I mean, I agree that they probably do have the final say in that. But I guess it kind of ties back to my earlier point about, the local and county governments having the say over our day-to-day lives. And so
Let me ask the question much more broadly, if I can.
Okay, sure.
Generally speaking, as somebody who wants to serve in local government, do you think the people in the Florida legislature are on your side in local government, or are they working against you?
There's definitely a tug of war there. I think they want to have the final say, but I think overall, they push down as much to the local governments as they can. Like I said, I'm going to have to look more into exactly what Tallahassee says about the transient rentals, but it just seems like there's got to be more that we can do as residents and a commission to take a tougher stance on these transient rentals.
Okay. Dan, I didn't know if you had a question you wanted to pop in.
Well, I did want to, Jason, to clarify if you could. You mentioned on both your questionnaire and in your opener that you're running again because you want to finish what you started. Could you, just like I asked Abby to dig down a little more on one of her answers, can you dig down a little more on that? What exactly is it that's gone unfinished through your time on the commission that you would like to see through?
And it's very, very simple. It's infrastructure, and I can dig in more, but it's really three things, and we can dig into all of them. It's continued infrastructure improvements that are aging in an aging city that we need to keep doing. As an attorney, as a practicing attorney, I hold the code of ordinances in Lighthouse Point dear, and they're not very good. I mean, I experience them every day. Some of them are been around and not updated since before I was born. So we started updating those a long time ago. When I first got elected, we actually have in process a comprehensive a rewrite of the Code of Ordinances that got delayed because of COVID and other reasons. And I would love to preside over that because I think my legal skills will bear fruit in that situation. So Code of Ordinances, major infrastructure improvements, and those are really the two main things. We've started the infrastructure improvements in the city with the support of the residents. We built a new Category 5 fire station with 65% approval of the residents for a bond to do that. We're building a new community center, again, on part of the same bond that the residents overwhelmingly approved. We've built the big, I call them the sexy buildings, candidly, but we need to pave roads. We need to look at seawalls. We need bridges. Bridges are a major issue in the city. There are many bridges that are I shouldn't say in desperate need, but are in need of repair. And in many ways, those aren't the sexy projects, but they're the most important projects. And candidly, they're the most difficult projects. And I was successful before on other infrastructure projects, and I'd like to see those other ones to conclusion. I hope that responsive to your question.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up by me. It's and I know your community well. I mean, it's puzzling because stop me if I say something that's factually incorrect. It is an affluent community. It's a well-manicured community. There's a high level of civic involvement for a city its size. The population of Lighthouse Point is what, 11 or 12,000 people, something like that?
11. 11,000.
Yeah. What are Dan and I missing here? Why are seawalls? Why would seawalls or roads, be dilapidated in a community with as much going for it as Lighthouse Point?
I think there is always, paramount in Lighthouse Point is candidly fiscal conservatism and fiscal responsibility. And I think there has been, throughout its history, a desire to be as lean and mean as possible, and keep taxes as low as possible, which are a good thing. Unfortunately, after 60 years, these chickens are coming home to roost, candidly. And I don't want to make it sound like we're not doing anything, or we haven't done anything on my watch. I mean, we had a major stormwater project. So I guess what I'm saying is, in my opinion, being fiscally responsible doesn't mean not spending money. It means spending money wisely. And now is the time, particularly with some of the federal assistance we're getting, to do that stuff, because you got to do the basic stuff. Yeah, I didn't redo my house until I redid my seawall and my roof. And I know we did it. One could argue that we did it a little, pardon my French, don't quote me on this one, ass backwards by building the sexy buildings first, but those were important as well. But now we need to do the basic stuff.
Abby, any comment from you on what you just heard from Jason about?
I think what he said there about being ass backwards, I think a lot of the residents would echo that, because, seeing those buildings go up, they are big, sexy buildings. But then the follow-up question from my neighbors is, well, why are there potholes in the roads, and why are these bridge projects taking, why aren't they going forward, or why are they taking so long to complete? And Jason's right. I mean, these things take money, and we want to keep taxes low. The residents do not want raised taxes, and I am a big opponent of raising the millage rates. So the question becomes, like Jason said, there's federal funds out there. Are we working as hard as we can as a city with our county counterparts and our state counterparts? We have a state representative that is a resident of Lighthouse Point. Are we lobbying him to bring appropriations back to the city, so that we can do some of these projects at at less of a burden to the residents? So that's my response. We, just work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Can I comment on that real
Yes.
quick? Yeah,
Yes.
no, I appreciate it. And I was the sole commissioner that when we decided to put that bond to the residents to do all these buildings, that at least voiced the concern that we were doing it backwards. Abby's correct, the residents who are asking these questions, they're fair questions, but 65% of the residents voted in favor of those buildings and those structures. So I sleep pretty good at night. I'm not saying that we don't need to do the other stuff, but and I was one of the ones that wasn't sure it was going to pass that overwhelmingly. The other thing Ms. Stafford brought up, and I agree with her on, is we do have a state house rep that lives in the city, and you can ask him if you want. He and I often talk about how we can be lobbying Tallahassee better to get more funds. I think we can be doing a better job of that. I just need to get other commissioners and other members of administration on the same page, because I know our state representative, who I'll just leave nameless for now for his sake, would be willing to support that. But I'm a big advocate of it. I mean, it's the residents' money as well that's up there in Tallahassee that needs to come back more to Lighthouse Point. But we did get, we're getting $5.6 million in American Rescue Fund money. And that's a lot of money for our city. Now, we're also in the process of reading the 600 pages of regulations that tell you what you can spend it on and what you can't spend it on. Because if you don't spend it on the right thing, you could be in trouble. But the good news is, I think the money's there to do these things, whether it's by fortune or good luck. But I'd like to be around to, again, like I said, finish what I started on the infrastructure side. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, let me make a quick point. Of course, you both alluded to, and I have no trouble mentioning his name. You both alluded to Chip LaMarca, who was a county commissioner, and I think was a Lighthouse Point city commissioner, right?
That's correct.
Before he went to the legislature. Now, he's the only Republican House member from Broward County in a legislature that is dominated by Republicans. Now, I know well, and of course, I spend a lot of time covering the legislature for the Sun Sentinel, and so I realized that there's a lot of money this year because of the federal largesse, and but Chip, of course, has Lauderdale by the Sea, and he's got Fort Lauderdale, and he's got other communities that are also asking for needs as well. But you've really got an asset that really no other city in Broward can claim. You've got a majority party legislator who lives in your community. So I mean, it is something. It's probably another conversation, but that's interesting. Jason, what kind of resources does Lighthouse Point put into resiliency and sea level rise and, preventing of flooding and things like that?
Well, we were one of the first cities, and this was admittedly before I was on the commission, that required raising seawalls. So we were, I would say, at the cutting edge of that back when, and that was done quite a while ago before I was on the commission. Resources wise, we are now starting to explore that. And I think what we really need to do is, I mean, those type of lifts are just heavy lifts for a small city. And we are going to have to either band together with the other small cities or lobby, because I mean, we've got a lot of miles of seawall in the city. And so candidly, resource wise, dollars, other than paving and patching and doing the things we need to do and fixing bridges, we're at the start of doing that, as a lot of other, candidly, cities are. I mean, others, bigger cities, are a little bit ahead of us, but I think these coastal cities are taking a look at that. But I think it's going to have to be a team effort, particularly with the smaller cities, because it's just, I mean, I know how expensive my seawall was to redo at my house. And, with a total budget of, just south of $18 million, stuff like that makes a dent. So we gotta get on that. Is really what it comes down to.
Your figure of $18 million refers to what?
Total revenues. Just south of 18 million is the total revenue of the budget for this current fiscal year.
Right. Okay. What's the total? That's that. If I'm hearing you right, that's the city tax revenue. What's the total amount of the? That's the whole budget. That's
the whole budget. The ad valorem taxes. Oh, you're testing me.
No, it's okay.
I bet ad valorem is probably about. It's 8,
12 or 14.
I think it's a little lower than that. I think it is a little lower than. And of that 18 million, by the way, we approximately 10 or 11 goes to our police and fire. So we run the whole rest of the city on $7 million. I mean,
not only that, to your figures, if it's an $18 million annual budget, the amount of money you're getting from the American Rescue Plan is almost 1/3 of 1 year's budget. That is a heck of a lot of money for a city your size.
It is. It is. It's no. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
I would point out, as far as when you said about the public safety and public safety budget, that's not atypical, right? I mean,
Right. Oh, except public
County
safety is
or city,
expensive. It's expensive. I mean, safety
half
is
to
expensive.
slightly over half is generally pretty typical, right?
Yeah. And I think it's
there's
about 10 million. I think ad valorem is probably about 10.
I've gotten the vibe from you and from this interview, as I did from the ones we did yesterday, that there's a real, and I respect this, there's a real reluctance to raise the millage rate. Abby, you indicated that you'd want to keep the millage rate, not have an increase. I understand that. I also wanted, though, to say that Lighthouse Point is going through what the Rio Vistas and Victoria Parks have been going through for a decade, which is the tearing down and building of these McMansions, right to the lot line. And it would seem to me that's going to result in a positive increase in your taxable revenue base in the city. Am I right about that?
It should. It should. It's just. It's funny sitting up there in government. It is going to. It just. I mean, especially with inflation right now. I mean, especially when 80% of our budget, over 80% of our budget is labor costs, and trust me, it's not going to pay the city commissioners. When over 80% of your budget is labor costs, and the vast majority of that is police and fire, and they are, usually by contract guaranteed 3% every year, that it accumulates pretty quickly. So after you take out homestead exemptions and additional homestead exemptions, it doesn't raise the revenue number as quickly as you would think. It does, but not as quickly as you would think.
Let me ask Abby this quick question. Abby, and I'll ask Jason Joffe to check me on this if I'm wrong. Right now, as we're sitting here, the city of Lighthouse Point is renegotiating the police contract with the police department, right? And so I want to ask you, Abby, you want to hold the line on taxes. Public safety is very important. It's certainly important to the people you want to represent as your constituents. What is the right balance? Do the cops in Lighthouse Point deserve a 3% pay increase next year? And how are you going to pay for that?
To be honest with you, I mean, the union negotiating the contract, I don't believe that's something that the city commissioners specifically do. That's up to the city attorney to negotiate that contract. I think our police force does a great job of policing the city. I support all of our first responders, both fire and police, and they deserve to be compensated for the job that they do.
Right. Okay. You're right. You're right that the city commission doesn't negotiate, but am I right? Does the mayor and city commission provide direction?
We have having been through this, the direct negotiations are with the mayor and city administration and the city's labor attorney. Last time we went through this, it got a little dicey, admittedly, and so I made a point to sit. I can sit in those negotiations, and then we also have shaded meetings with administration to give our opinions, and ultimately it is up to the city commission to approve the contract. It is negotiated and presented by the mayor and city administration, but ultimately it's the commission that approves the contract.
Okay. All right. We're respectful of your time and mindful of it's coming up on close to an hour. So I want to give you both a chance to make a closing statement, but I'll also open the floor to both of you briefly. Is there really an important issue that Dan and I haven't raised and brought up that either of you felt you wanted to talk about?
I think you guys
Abby,
did. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to give Abby the first opportunity.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
No, I think you guys hit most of the important issues. Like I said, in talking to my neighbors and my experience as a resident of Lighthouse Point, the ones that are most important to me and my neighbors. So I think you guys did a good job. Okay.
Well, thanks. Same question to you, Jason.
Yeah, you guys did your homework. You nailed it pretty good.
Well, thank you very much. It's really, I was reading last night, just as an aside, it's interesting. 1956, Pompano Beach wanted to annex what is the southern part of Lighthouse Point. And the residents back then said, no, you're not annexing us into Pompano. We got a plan B. We're going to create our own city. And that is how it began. It's a great story about the evolution of Broward. So Let's do this. I'll give each of you about a minute and a half to make a closing statement. Again, We appreciate very much, and I'm not asking for personal criticism here because you've been very respectful to each other. That's a great thing to see. But it's important to tell us, and through us, to tell the people that are going to watch this, what distinguishes you from the other person in this race. It's really important. So, Abby, you have the floor first.
Okay. Again, thank you for your time this afternoon. I think the thing that distinguishes me from Jason, I'm a numbers person. CPA background, small business background. I would bring a different perspective to the city commission. Yes, I have a lot to learn, but I'm willing to sit down and learn it and serve the residents of Lighthouse Point and listen to their feedback and take it to the city commission and continue to improve the city and make it even greater than it already is.
You're muted.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Abby, and thank you for being so succinct there too. I appreciate that. Jason, you have the floor. Go ahead.
I'll try and be as succinct. It's harder as an attorney, but I promise I'll try. I think what sets me apart is I like to think that I've been and will continue to be a voice of reason up on the commission. That's not to imply there are unreasonable people, but my work as an attorney forces me to really analyze issues and look at both sides of an issue and listen to residents, pros and cons of both issues, and then call a ball and a strike and make a decision when the question's called. I also I know Abby is a CPA and I respect that, but I do believe I am also a numbers person. I practice commercial litigation, which requires knowledge of budgets and whatnot. I have a finance degree from the University of Florida. Abby and I appear to both be big Gator fans, and a minor in economics. So that's another thing we share. But candidly, I think I'm proven. I think I've got a solid track record of delivering on difficult promises that I've made, and I want to continue more of the same and be responsive to residents, listen to their input, and try and continue to improve the city where I'm going to raise my wife and 2 kids for the rest of my days.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that very much. Thank you both for participating. Thank you both for your questionnaires. Good luck to you both.
Yes.
And thanks for being with us this afternoon. Really appreciate it.